Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Laying Up podcast. Soly here. I am not officially back yet from paternity leave, but just checking in to say thank you for tuning in to another episode. This is a really fun concept we've come up with here and kind of kicking off a series of episodes that we're going to do about trip planning. We get a lot of questions about trip planning. We're going to outline all this as we get going here, but brought in Ru Macdonald and TC here to chat about what it's like to just everything you need to know about planning your first trip to Scotland, which we think should be to the St. Andrews area. If you're listening in your car, I'm not telling you to turn it off, but there is a YouTube version. Hopefully, you're already watching this on YouTube. That has a lot of video laid in on all this. I'm hoping that this will be a resource for people as they're planning their trips. You can send this to people that are, maybe going to be on one of your trips or thinking about going on one of your trips as you go to plan it out and see what some of these places are like. Got a big archive of footage from a lot of places in Scotland. It was fun to dig through all that and combine all this into one place. We've talked about a lot of these places in this, in this podcast over the years, but getting all in one place to say, here's the tiers, here's how these courses work. It's all right here. So love your feedback on this episode. We'd love to hear what other regions you'd like to hear us tackle, as we are going to do several of these throughout 2025. We've already recorded one other of these as well. So I want to give a shout out to our friends at Roback. You all know Roback, best fit, best feel. The cooler weather is here. It means it is the best season. That is Roback hoodie season, our single favorite item that we own. It's unbeatable. It's perfect for every situation. It's soft. It's comfortable. We wear it everywhere. Like I said, I think I said this a year and a half ago. All of my family, like newborn photos, are going to be with me wearing Roback because it's the first thing I reach for every single morning. They also just released their new hybrid jacket. It is fantastic. It's got insulated quilting on the front and back panels and stretched knit sleeves. It's both warm and flexible. The internal and external pockets are clutch as well. I've been loving this jacket. It's super clean, comfortable, the perfect secondary layer for on or off the course. I'm not really playing a lot of golf, but sitting out back in the evening wearing my hybrid jacket has been very nice. Finally, Roback's Delta pants are back in stock. They sold out almost immediately after the first release. It is very easy to see why. Fabric is comfortable. It's wrinkle resistant. It has a really clean look. The belt loops make it ideal for the course or just your everyday go-to pant. You can style it with the Roback hoodie, the hybrid jacket, or the crew, and you are set to look and feel good. Roback is having their biggest sale of the year, 20% off the entire website for all customers. That's 20% off hoodies, pants, jackets, and more. No code needed. Just head over to roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Introduce others to the most comfortable activewear in the game this holiday season. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's our podcast on planning a golf trip to St. Andrews. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Laying Up podcast. Soly here. We have a little bit of a twist on today, a little bit of a new series we're going to start. We've done a lot of golf travel content over the course of many years, but wanted to zoom out and start to make a few episodes on, golf travel in general. We're going to start with one of our favorite places. We have the planner, the guy that puts together many, many trips and has put together many, many trips to Scotland from our side, Mr. TC. Hello, TC.
Hey, Soly, glad to be here. Stoked to talk Scotland. This is like the fun part of our job. This is the non-job part.
This is the non-pro golf part, right?
Yeah.
This is this is where a lot of our passion for golf is related. And speaking of passionate people, longtime guest of this show, I think we have to go back 7 years. I think we did about a 3-hour podcast about Scottish golf. I'm just going to guess not everybody remembers everything about that, so we're gonna reheat a lot of that. But Scottish golf expert, and you'll be able to tell very quickly from the accent, Scottish man himself, Mr. Ru Macdonald. Hello, Ru.
And Irish. My mum is Irish, so we'll go Scottish and Irish. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to travel around the world a little bit with my job, and I can confirm that Scottish golf is unmatched. So looking forward to trying to educate as many people as possible on the show.
Well, and that's what it speaks to. You have a passion for not only just Scottish golf, but I could tell from, when we maybe met almost 10 years ago, was like you have a passion for like tour. I call them tourists, but other golfers from other nationalities, other countries, getting the most out of their experience when they travel to Scotland, right? And you've created a lot of content around that. You have a YouTube channel, you have podcast, like you've just done a lot of that. And you were the first person I thought of when we were starting this series to say, you will be the exact person that can help us drill down into what makes Scottish golf, especially enjoyable. Kind of the taste and the appetite of a lot of American travelers. And this is kind of maybe a broad, appealing episode. I think, there's a large range of travelers from age and, how much money they want to spend and what kind of golf they're all into. We're going to try to cover it as best we can from kind of what we're passionate about, kind of give some color on some things like, hey, maybe that's not our taste, our favorite flavor, but you might love this exact thing if you are into this kind of thing, and touch on as much as we can. But TC, I'm going to start this one actually with you. What makes golf in Scotland special? This is coming from an American, right? Why would somebody make a trip over to Scotland to play golf?
I think first and foremost, truly the home of golf. It's where it started. It's everything about the game makes more sense once you've played golf in Scotland. And I was actually talking about this last night with a buddy of mine who I fish a lot with, and he travels all over the world to like go catch a particular kind of fish. And I was kind of relating that to like, man, I'm going to Scotland to play a particular kind of golf hole or to have a
Mm,
particular kind of feeling. And so he's like, he'll fly to the Seychelles to catch this bonefish, and he wants to, that singular feeling for 45 seconds or whatever is why he made that whole trip. For me, that could be standing on a course that I didn't really know anything about prior and having that feeling of, it could be at twilight, it could be in the morning, wind could be howling, the conditions could be awful, whatever, but just having that feeling a few times in a trip of, hey man, I'm so far from home. I've never heard of this golf course before, and it's just like truly transporting me to it. Like it feels timeless almost, where it's something that you're going to remember the rest of your life. Standing in that particular spot, looking out. Like I remember, I took Zach Blair and our buddy Dan to Brora, and there's a rainbow over these sheep on that little par 3, and I was like, man, I'm gonna remember this singular moment for the rest of my life, and that's really, really powerful. And that to me is like the golf's really good when you go to Scotland, but what's kept me coming back is searching for those unexpected moments. Like you have the expectations of going to certain places or taking off certain courses, but for me, it's the unexpected kind of washing over you. And I feel like, Ireland's great and England's great and Australia's great, but for me, like that, like Scotland is such a unique package as well, where there's so much variety in such a and the people are so wonderful and the culture is so deep and rich that and it's geographically very, very doable, and there's and you can do it in so many different combinations that it's like it's the total package for
mhm.
me.
That's well said, and I think something I want to kind of permeate through all of this is Americans at times can tend and trend towards the more American style courses in Scotland, that as kind of their favorites and the ones they anchor around. And I just a point of emphasis I think we want to make through all of these is like what I've found to be especially appealing about traveling anywhere to play golf is experience it. You're there to do something different, right? Like you are there, like a course, like Kilspindie, a under 6,000 yard golf course would not be something I would seek out in the United States necessarily, right? Or that I wouldn't travel to go play. But there, it's different. Like you want to go and experience things that are different about the golf culture there than what you get at home, right? That's an important permeating thing because I think also what we're not just going to sit here and list off go print off a list of the top 10 courses in Scotland and suggest that you go play those. We're going to help you try to build out a golf trip that has layers on top of it. That's like, all right, yeah, if you go to this region, you got to play this course. Like this is the one, worth traveling for. But like what you're filling out with the rest of that trip doesn't necessarily have to be the second ranked course and the third ranked course. Like getting some variety in your experience, even if it's your first trip, like even more so if it's your first trip, is some of the most rewarding stuff of what we've kind of experienced in a lot of our travels. The courses you found, TC, that we've played have just, because that is the instinct, right? The instinct is I'm going here. This is my one chance. I'm going to play all the courses I can in this area. And that's not necessarily the way to fill out a golf trip. Do you see American?
Which,
Go ahead.
real quick, I'll raise my hand and say I didn't find any of these courses.
No, but like
They've been around for hundreds of years, and I rely on people like Rue or other relationships that I have to kind of. I'll have ideas or I'll look at maps and stuff, and then bounce stuff off of these people. And a lot of time it's, hey, you know what? I've never been there. Tell me how it is, kind of thing. And weirdly, Rue, I'm almost shocked that there's a certain percentage of Scots that don't seem to explore their own country, which is crazy too.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have made people like me feel that we're not exploring enough. But yeah, I mean, I guess we're so rich, and like you touched on Ireland, the difference between Scotland and Ireland is the intensity of like really good golf courses. Like Ireland, of course, has incredible links golf courses, but I would say like you're a bit light on sort of the second, third tier courses, and you certainly drive longer between those courses. So yeah, we're so like lucky to have so many great golf courses, so many great links golf courses. I don't know if we're gonna get into it now, but like the analogy I used starting off coming to Scotland is you're coming to Scotland to play links golf. There's a couple of really cool parkland courses, but if you don't come to Scotland and play links golf, it's like going to Italy and eating hamburgers, uh, because Scotland has got about a third of the world's links golf courses. Yeah, Glen Eagles and Loch Lomond are lovely, but yeah, come for the links golf courses.
So I've never been to Scotland. I've never played links golf. Why is links golf different? Why is it the crown jewel of the game of golf?
Well, TC, you've played all over the world, and yeah, links golf's a bit like playing on the sand belt. I just think you can get more creative with it. It's more accessible for everybody. Pace of play is better because your ball doesn't go into knee high rough. I mean, there's so many benefits. I'm probably not sophisticated enough to go into like a whole list of them, but like there's a couple straight off the bat.
Yeah, it just makes sense, right? It's like that's golf was played on the links because it was you didn't have to overly manicure it or sand cap it. It was already like that, and so
Let's
the
just start with that
inputs.
of like
Yeah,
this is land that is linking the land and the sea, right? This was is land that is not, correct me if I'm wrong, group, cannot be used for farming necessarily. The soil types, it creates a firmer layer of turf. You have incredible views on almost all of these courses that you're playing because you are right up against the sea, and it's truly like special ground, hollow ground. Like the
yeah,
sound the ball makes when it hits is different. The feeling when you strike a shot is different. The way you play shots, how much the wind is going to be blowing in these exposed locations, how you have to play around these small little pot bunkers that are designed specifically for this type of land, how the holes are designed to play in certain different winds. There's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. But most importantly to me, it's like you just get the ball off the ground, you just let it roll. Like that, it's so much fun to watch the ball roll, fun for all skill levels. You're not carrying lakes and creeks and having massive houses on one side, water on the other, like you'd find in Florida. Like it's just the most brain activating style of golf for no matter what the skill level.
I would even say from a physical standpoint, even walking, like you're less sore at the end of the day. It's,
Totally.
it's a nice firm surface to walk on. Rue, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like these days the summer is going deeper into the fall in Scotland. Like the springs maybe a little bit more wet and cold, but like on links courses, talking to a bunch of guys on the west coast of Scotland that are members of Prestwick and Turnberry, they're like, oh, like we play these courses in the winter. We play the links courses in the winter, and then we want to go play parkland courses in the summer just because it's more variety, and we don't get that during the winter, and we kind of want to spice things up a little bit. But like it's just they drain well, and they're playable year round.
And we talked about like why links golf, and like if you think about why we're still finding these hidden gems, is because they're so sustainable to keep.
Yeah.
Like the most modest of operations, when you rock up, there's maybe one greenkeeper, there's one person manning the clubhouse. The cost to obviously manage the golf course is kind of done by nature. So it's a lesson for a lot of the world actually, and just how sustainable and like cost effective running a golf course can be.
Yeah, green speeds don't have to be like 14.
It's a lesson, but it also speaks to like the unique nature of the land too. Like you can't just pick that up and do that where TC and I live, right? It is, but that it also speaks to the whole culture of golf, right? People, Americans especially, will rock up to some of these clubs and ask a member what their annual dues are and be completely shocked because in a lot of places it is less than what a lot of Americans would pay for a month of dues at their clubs back in and wherever they live, and not be getting the same depth of golf experience. It's just can you speak a little bit to like what the golf culture is like and how it is different to most places you've seen?
Well, I mean, to use my example of a member of a top 100 golf course in the world, Tom Morris designed. It's a 27-hole facility, driving range, practice putting green, and I pay less than $1,000 a year to be a member. And yeah, it's kind of in the north of Scotland, but it's within 20 minutes drive of an international airport. So yeah, like we are very lucky culturally. Golf touches every part of society. So that club that I mentioned, the modest annual dues, we could have your local painter and decorator, you could have your lawyer, you could have your banker, you could have your high business man executive. It just touches everybody, and you're brought up with it with your parents or your grandfather. your friend's father. It just touches all society. I think, given how accessible it is, given that 99.5% of golf courses in Scotland are public, given that we have the right to roam here, which is any member of the public can walk across any part of any land without fear of trespassing. That's why you see so many dog walkers running across the fairways of North Berwick or St Andrews, is because they have the right to be there. They have to be respectful of the golf, and they have to be aware of the health and safety implications of walking across a golf course. But yeah, like, I think that's a huge part of it. Like, that's why you guys, or mutual friends that we have in the industry, get excited at the sight of a golf course full of dog walkers, because it's kind of symbolic, right? If a dog walker can be on the golf course, anybody can be on the golf course. And I think it's a really key part of it, because people grow up with the golf community as part of theirs, and it's not some separate thing.
Just connected to society so much better too. Like, compared to country clubs are, walls up, trees, fences, and hiding away, versus like North Berwick just rolls right into town. St. Andrews, obviously the most famous course of them all, famously rolls directly into the town. It's just all connected exactly to society. That's really well said. But what makes Scotland so popular then for Americans, Rue? Like, what's the appeal? Kind of set the scene for what it's like from arrival, from both from planning and arrival and getting around, and kind of why there's so many Americans that just pour in year after year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that the Open comes back, the biggest international golf tournament in the world, kind of comes back every other year, it feels like, to Scotland. It's a great advert for links golf, but of course, a lot of Scotland's open water courses benefit from that. Obviously, I work and we work in the world of professional golf. That's got a huge impact in driving interest in the game and into golf travel. I think our main market for overseas visitors is North Americans, and there is the intrigue and the interest in sort of the history of the game, and obviously the ancestry that is tied to both Scotland and Ireland with North Americans. I think that's a huge part to play. And I think culturally, without giving everyone a boring history lesson, the game of golf kind of took fire, or caught fire in St Andrews, Scotland. It was then spread across the UK. Scottish golf pros got on boats to the east coast of America, and golf grew from there. And now, we're going through this pro crisis at the moment. Who owns golf? Well, Scotland definitely created golf, and America have kind of ran away with it culturally, and sort of, unfortunately, the rest of the world has kind of copied the American model of golf, which is private clubs, expensive green fees. But yeah, there's a cultural tie there with America and Scotland, I think, from the very early beginnings of golf in America, I think.
What one thing I was kind of surprised. I was always intimidated by Scotland, prior to ever making my first trip. Of like, one, you got to go drive on the opposite side of the road. Two, like, this is going to cost a fortune to do this whole trip. Three, how do you even get tee times at these places? Like, and I was extremely surprised. My very first trip in 2015, land at Edinburgh Airport, rent a car. Yeah, I got to drive on the opposite side of the road. You kind of learn how to do it within the first hour. That first hour is a little harrowing, but you get it done. And you show up in Fife, and like the walls come down on everything, right? You show up in St. Andrews, and like, yeah, it's kind of hard to get on the old course. We can talk about how you do that, but like, getting on the new course, getting on the Jubilee, everyone there from the moment I was there was trying to make me have the best possible golf trip I could have without kissing my ass and expecting a tip handout of some kind, right? It was like, I was like, kind of like, what's the catch here? Like, I don't understand why this is this welcoming, but it speaks to what we were saying about just the Scottish golf culture and how welcoming it is to tourists. I mean, there's a dollar incentive tied to all of that. Everyone in the town of St. Andrews understands the American tourists keep the restaurant industry absolutely bustling, and the golf industry and the tour operators. There's just a massive industry that follows that. But that was a big takeaway that I want people to have too, is like, there's certain places where it's really hard to go travel and do a golf trip, and there's certain places that are easy. And that's kind of why we're starting with this of, suggesting what is the first Scottish golf trip. We're going to default to Americans here. Most of our listeners are Americans, but the first Scottish golf trip that Americans should make, where is it to? I have a feeling I know the answer.
I feel that's one for you guys, but I think St Andrews is where people gravitate towards. I think it's very hard not to, given that it's kind of a symbolic part of golf and golf travel, and certainly Scottish golf travel. One thing I would say on that is, don't be like focus purely on St Andrews. If your old course tee time doesn't work out, I don't think that should be a deterrent for coming over here. I think you should still make the trip. And I see and hear so many people kind of just say, "Oh, I'll wait another year if I can't get St Andrews tee time." I think you're slowing your Scottish annual Scottish golf trip down by doing that. You're going to come to Scotland regardless and fall in love with the place and plan your next Scottish golf trip. So don't be put off. But yeah, the answer to that question is St Andrews and Fife and that greater region.
I would say there's going back to your kind of points about why Scotland in the first place, Sally, is I think also like there's a distinct lack of bullshit in Scotland where Scots are very frugal in a good way. I think Scots are very they don't there's a lot of pride there. They don't ever want to be taken advantage of. And I feel like they pay that forward to visitors and to, others. And I think, maybe getting away from that a little bit just with some of the green fee increases these last few years, but that's the American way, or that's supply and demand. And as long as they're pouring that back into the golf courses and kind of taking care of the locals, that's fine. But I think for me too, the going to Scotland feels like the best parts of going to Europe, and everybody speaks English. Like there's something to be said for that. There's no language barrier except for in certain parts of Scotland where I just can't fucking understand anybody. Um, but no, and like, people legitimately, you'll go to a club and everybody wants to know what you thought of the golf course, and genuinely
People are
so.
excited you're there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there's that feeling of, some of the smaller places, hey, my green fee went towards furthering this place that's been around for a couple hundred years. So, I would say the worst part about going to Scotland for a golf trip is the walk from baggage claim to the rental car
Yes.
facility
That's
at
tough.
the Edinburgh airport is like
That'd be the worst thing of the whole trip.
that's
Yeah.
what I like have anxiety about more so than driving on the left side of the road at this point. So, but yeah, I would say I think right along the lines with Rue there too is you're going to Scotland because it's the home of golf and to understand golf better. And if you haven't been there before, you want to go to the home of golf, and that's St Andrews and Fife. And I think if you really love your first Scottish golf trip, you're gonna come back, right? Like you're gonna come back and go up to the Highlands or go to the West Coast or go out to the Western Isles, all that stuff. But like I think everybody has this tendency to want to squeeze 3 or 4 regions into one trip and cross off all these things because they don't think they're ever going to go back. And it's like, just trust yourself. I know it's expensive, but also like you can do these trips for less than you think you can as well if you're not trying to just go play a bunch of open rota courses too. So I think like two regions, like you can do, and from Fife you can go up to you know, Cruden Bay or Aberdeen from there, or down to East Lothian. There's some jumping off points there, but like I don't like too many times. Like I get probably a dozen messages or emails a week of like, "Hey, we're going to Scotland and we're doing, St Andrews, and then we're going down to North Berwick, and then we're going to Prestwick and
And
Troon
true. Yeah.
and Turnberry, and then we're flying out of or we're flying out of Inverness, and we're doing 2 days at Dornoch." And I'm like the what's gonna help you appreciate a Dornick so much more is to go play a Golspie or a Brora, or what's gonna help you appreciate, St. Andrews so much more is to go play an Ely or, Carnoustie, go play a Panmure. Like there's, like everybody has it in their mind that they want to go play championship golf courses when really a lot of the people going over are 8, 10, 12, 15 handicaps, aren't used to playing in the wind, aren't used to playing 36 whole days. And the championship golf courses, like, yes, they're more notable or they're more famous, but it's like, it's just longer
It's a sample.
for the
It's just a
most
sample of the
part.
offering too, right?
Yeah, and like you're just gonna get the shit beat out of you if you're a higher handicap, and you're gonna be tired and all of that, and you're not gonna enjoy, like there's so much more quirk and charm and flair in some of these shorter, quirkier golf courses that are they just have a lot more personality to them, and you're gonna enjoy that just as much as you are the open rota course. So
Rue,
soapbox.
Yeah,
There you go.
no. Can you give us an idea before we kind of dive into Fife, St. Andrews area? Kind of, so give us an idea of the geography of Scotland, right? Where the top courses are, and kind of what what the different regions are. I don't know how many you would classify specifically, but as TC was just saying, you can get caught up if you're going off a top 10 list of some kind. You can get caught up in 4 different regions pretty quickly, and that's maybe not the best way to go about your trip. So give us an idea of what's possible to do maybe together amongst those regions as well, and what is like, no, just go to this region and do this.
I think it's really important just to echo your points about the driving, because it's a mistake that I see almost all the time. A 90-mile stretch of road in the US, and I've been lucky enough to travel around the US. Like, you've got some great infrastructure, TC, in the US. Like, you've prided yourselves on the infrastructure, and we just don't. Like, some of the roads are dual carriageway, like proper highways, but some of the courses, or the roads between courses, are quite hairy. Single, two-way roads that you're getting used to driving a shift stick car on the other side of the road. It's not a nice drive, and 90 miles in America is a lot longer in the UK and in Scotland. So, yeah, just slow down. Try and find two places to kind of camp up and stay for the duration of your trip. 2 regions, and I think Scotland is kind of broken into sort of 5. TC's making a 6th region in the Western Isles of Scotland, but we've got 5. You've got the Highlands of Scotland, which people kind of think is the whole country. It really is just the north of Scotland, which has your Royal Dornocks, your Castle Stuarts, your Nairns, your Broras. That is quintessential Scotland. That's kind of what you see in the movies. Beautiful vistas, mountains, lochs, you name it, it's up there. In fact, it's probably the region I would go on a couple's golf trip to Scotland. Or if you're bringing your significant other, I'd probably bring her up there. The east coast of Scotland, or the northeast coast of Aberdeen, is kind of the second region. I'm just doing these kind of in a
Sure.
chronological order, from north to south. But yeah, this is the region that I'm currently speaking from. So you've got the likes of Cruden Bay, Royal Aberdeen, Trump International, and then further east, you've got kind of the Carnoustie and Fife region. So you've got Carnoustie, St Andrews, and we can obviously go deeper into St Andrews. So that's kind of like your east nuke of Fife. It's basically Fife, what we'd call that, or St Andrews. So that's your sort of 3 regions to that point. Also on the east coast, which is near Edinburgh, is the region called East Lothian. They kind of brand themselves Scotland's Gulf Coast because they've got an incredible richness of golf courses, almost spanning. They're almost next door to each other. They're sort of that close to each other. And the likes of Muirfield, North Berwick, Gullen are down that way. And then on the other side of the country, the west coast, only an hour and a half's drive from the east coast, to give you a sense of how small Scotland is another incredibly rich region, which we sort of all watched on TV this year. Was the area of Ayrshire, which is home to Troon, Prestwick, Western Gales, Turnberry. So yeah, there's a crazy visual which I'm sure you will find on to support the audio here, Chris. But there's a visual of Scotland's golf courses, and like they're almost, the whole map is full on the east coast, but when you get to the west coast, we've got a bit more of a kind of a mountainous scene up there, certainly to the north of Ayrshire. So there's a few less golf courses, but
Shout out to
yeah,
Big Shot Bob.
exactly. Yeah, it only took us 20 minutes to speak about Big Shot. Yeah, he's his region of Oban and sort of the Fort Williams region. There's certainly a lack of golf in that region for good reason.
So, okay, if we're going, we're going to cover Fife really within this episode, right? Of the first trip there, your first trip. So you land in Edinburgh. How far is it to Fife? How do we get there? What's the best way to do that? Do I rent a car? Do I have a car service take me out there? Will I need a car once I'm in Fife? How does that offer differ if I'm doing it on my own versus hiring, doing my trip through a service of some kind? Kind of paint the scene for how you would go about setting up accommodations, travel, and all that stuff.
Yeah, but the travel side is super interesting. Like, the cost of rental cars seem to be quite high at the moment in Scotland. Having done my research before the recording, it's staggering to see the change in the amount of overseas, I'm going to say American again, North American guys that are gravitating to a concierge bus driver. Like 95% of golf trips booked now are using a golf driver, someone to just
Wow.
basically drive you around, which is pretty nuts. And that is a quick way to kind of increase the cost of that because that isn't cheap. But it also just takes away the stress of having to drive. And if you've got a group of six, eight, eight plus, 6 to 8, is ideal for a bus driver, and it would be kind of similar to what if you were paying for taxis everywhere. The St Andrews region is unique in that there's so much golf in that region that you could take an Uber, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from Edinburgh to St Andrews. You could also take the train to the nearby station, which is Lukers. Very
Which
easy.
which I have, like, I'll just throw a flag there. The fact that you can't take the train directly into St. Andrews as a university town and, somewhere that was, like, exists because it was on the train line there and the Old Course Hotel was a train station. Every time it just blows my mind, and I'm paying, and, like, I typically the last few times I've been over, I've taken a cab back. Like, we've had a rental car, but we've got staggered departures and everything, and I'm taking a cab back to the airport at, 4 AM or whatever, and I'm just like, "Man, I'm paying $150 for a cab from St. Andrews to EDI," and, like, the fact that there's not a reliable train service point to point there is crazy.
That's one for the
Sorry.
trap draw. But yeah, but what I would say is that Lookers is about a 10-minute cab ride from St
Yeah.
Andrews, so it's very doable.
I've done that before. Back when I was living in Europe and balling truly on a budget, I was lugging golf clubs in and out of the Lucre station there.
And
Yeah,
then
and
and
then
then you
and
go
then
Lukers to Edinburgh Central, and then you have to take another train to the airport, right?
yeah, or the tram, which we
Yeah.
spent a lot of money on, which some might question the success of that, but that the tram would take you right into the city center, and out to the airport. So
Yeah.
Um, I honestly would Uber would be my bet, and then you just take there's a million cab companies in St Andrews that could take you to and from your rounds of golf, and I think it would just be a lot cheaper than
Worth
than
noting, there's no Uber within St. Andrews when you do get there. City Cab, I think, is the one we've used in the past. You call them up, schedule it, and they'll get you,
Yep.
to and from, right? And I think, and we'll get into some of these courses as well, but you could play 3, 4 courses within walking distance right there in St. Andrews and not need a cab other than if you're going to Ely or if you're going to Kings Barnes or if you're going to Crail or maybe Carnousie's a bit more of a haul from there, maybe 40 minutes or so, probably from Fife. Would be kind of stretching it out a little bit, but it is possible to do it without your own transportation. But to your point, for the larger trips, like we got a van and a driver when we did our Ireland trip, which it obviously different than Scotland. If it was almost a must do in Ireland with how kind of tight those roads are out there, and like talk about releasing the stress too, because again, if you've never been to a golf trip in the UK or Ireland, like your guys. Americans like to have a couple drinks after a round or something like that. Your drinking and driving laws are a lot more strict than ours. I don't know exactly what the tolerance is in Scotland, but don't want to be mixing alcohol with driving on the wrong side of the road, and especially with how tight your guys' laws are over there.
that's a great flag actually, and yeah, I've worked a little bit in London in the last kind of decade, and they have 2 or 3 pints after work and drive home. I mean, you couldn't even really have a bottle of beer in Scotland. We've got because close to a zero tolerance on
Yeah,
drink driving. Like culturally, we've had a problem with alcohol. I actually think it's quite good because it's black and white. You don't
yeah.
really chance it. So that's a
Yeah, it
great. It's
kinda
a great
takes the
flag.
decision out of your hands, which I think
Yeah,
is refreshing.
But the
yeah.
point of that being about being in the car is like one, you can have your drinks in the back. I don't know if that's technically legal. I didn't necessarily approve of that, but like your time in the back with the people you're traveling with becomes vacation time as well, instead of stress of getting from place to place, right? So I think it is, yeah, it's an added expense, but with that many people, you need multiple rental cars anyways. Like you might as well spend a little bit extra per person and kind of have that time to talk about your round and try. It really is some strong memories from the 2 times I've taken trips where we have taken a car. So
And part of the beauty of going to Fife and St. Andrews is you're posted up there, and there's gonna be half the days of your trip you probably won't need
even need it.
transportation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So okay, if I'm going on this trip, where should I stay? I'm getting into Fife. What are my options and kind of what's the charming route? What's the expensive route? If I'm on a budget, where am I going? Kind of give me some of those options.
I think hopefully you guys agree. Like St Andrews is one of maybe 3 or 4 like genuine golf towns in Scotland that I just think you can't avoid. I think you have to stay in St Andrews.
Yeah.
Like people have been drawn up to the Fairmont St Andrews, for example, which is out of town. You literally could be in any Fairmont in the world. Fairmont's a lovely hotel chain, as there's lots of other hotel chains, but they're a chain because they want you to look and feel the same when you're in those properties. St Andrews is different. Like get yourself in St Andrews. The cost of accommodation is through the roof in St Andrews, hotel wise. Consider, I think, self catering accommodation in St Andrews. I think that's kind of the obvious place to start. I don't know if you guys agree.
I've been like we've stayed everywhere from Airbnbs to I've done like a little, a little bed and breakfast. I've stayed at the little Dunvegan spot there. I've stayed at the Old Course Hotel, which I personally hate. It's like maybe the most depressing place I've ever stayed. It's just dark and
I
just
could
a
TC, let me
what?
tell you, I stayed at Agnes Blackadder Hall one time, a dorm, a little dorm there. Let me tell you, you did not stay the most depressing place you could stay at St. Andrews. But man, was it affordable. Holy crap, was it
Well,
affordable.
that's the thing. It's depressing knowing how much you're paying for it,
Yeah.
and you're paying the piper to get that guaranteed St. Andrews, Old Course tea time there. But it's just a weird walk too. Back, like you feel weird, like you're so close to town, but you're weirdly disconnected from it as well. So yeah, I mean, there's so many little like 10, 12, 14 room bed and breakfasts that it's tough to go wrong. But yeah, I totally agree. Staying in town because that's the magic of it. There's an energy there. There's the students. There's the bookstore. Was it Topping and Company? There's some great coffee shops, which is kind of a rarity in Scotland. Rue, you guys do not do like I need a nice strong cup of coffee in the morning, and that's not a consistent theme.
No, no,
Like
certainly not early. Like 8:30 might be the time yet these coffee
yeah.
shops open, which certainly blow your guys' minds. And I fully agree with you on that one. You made a good point there, Solly, about the Blackadder accommodation. I mean, it's definitely on my list here about if you're looking for budget accommodation in the summer. St Andrews is a vibrant, one of the most affluent universities that you can go to, colleges that you can go to in the UK, made famous by the royals that went there about 2 decades ago. But when the students vacate in the summer, they actually lease the halls out to more and more golfers now. So instead of paying £500 a night in a 5-star hotel, which is pretty much the going rate now in St Andrews, you could probably grab a room there for certainly closer to the £100 mark. And yeah, certainly slumming it a little bit, but
I remember this. We shared double beds, there was four of us shared two double beds. It was $70 a night though. I remember that. I was trying to keep to $40 a day on my accommodation back in those days. So if you want to do it on the cheap, you definitely have options there.
And
Or
then I think if you wanna splurge, I would say at the Russecks or the Ruseks or however you pronounce it. Like, that's the no-brainer. That's the nice hotel in town, best location, and, best food and beverage offerings.
So tie this in now, Rue, with getting an old course tea time, service providers, tea time providers, concierge, whatever you were calling them there, kind of the appeal of that. I've personally never done that through, a Scottish trip other than the one we did with a bunch of members that we took, which was through Connoisseur Golf. But kind of take us to the appeal of that. Does that help you get an old course tea time? And if you're not doing that, how are we getting on the old course?
they all have their merits. I mean, you guys in North America are quite tight on vacation time. So if you don't have time on your hands, and if time is money, you would throw it to these guys, and they would take care of it all. But I think now with the internet and kind of the content I'm trying to share on across online, I think you can find a lot of this out yourself. There's definitely cases where golf travel agents kind of come in useful. The one thing I would look out for in St Andrews is looking for an authorized St Andrews Links provider. They essentially have premium guaranteed tee times to sell, and they are premium. That you're having to pay for additional golf courses. You're having to stay in certain hotels, and you do pay a premium, but it is guaranteed. For me, that is the value of a golf travel agent in this instance. Absolutely. do we want to go into like the different ways to get an old course tee
Sure,
time?
absolutely, because it is that kind of permeates through a lot of things here, right? Because if you're not doing that, you're kind of putting yourself a little bit behind the eight ball on whether or not you're going to be able to get one, as I understand it.
Yeah. So you've got the guaranteed premium providers, and there is probably 30 to 50 of those. You could Google them, you can find them. I've certainly got some recommendations as well of certain ones that I like. But then you've got your kind of advanced ballot reservation, which is they're calling the Swelcome package. You're essentially paying for the old course and the new or the Jubilee. It's basically a 2 round package. This is great. So this takes place in August. We've just been through it. It's an advanced reservation ballot, and the likelihood of you coming out of that is pretty slim. But it does give you a bit of a runway to actually say, well, look, I've got my tea time, or I don't have my tea time. So results for that are coming out next month in October. So you've got from October to, I guess you've got 9 months to sort of figure it out. That's a no-brainer to throw your name into that every August. As I said, the supply and demand of all course tea times across the board and Scottish golf trips are just through the roof at the moment. So just manage expectations. The next one would be your, I guess, your 48-hour ballot, which again is all done through standrewslinks.com. And that is, as it sort of says, 48 hours before your day of play, you would go into the ballot. You're also in with locals, St Andrews ticket holders. So the likelihood of coming out of that is, less than 10 to 1. So
Wow.
at the moment, I'm just hearing unprecedented demand, just crazy.
Do
So
people like from out of town, like, are people from, if you're, do you have to be in the city limits or anything to enter that ballot, or if really anybody can enter it from anywhere in the country and just like try to turn up at St. Andrews if they actually get the tea time or something?
yeah, I mean, so without getting into the weeds too much, local ticket holders, which are made up of clubs in the town, including the RNA or the St Andrews Golf Club, which I'm a member of, like we do get a slightly better chance of going into the local ticket applicants, but it's still pretty
Yeah.
difficult. And yeah, there's people from all over Scotland, the UK, the world putting in for that. So it's really, yeah, it's really really hard to come away with an all course tea time.
Hmm.
And it's also not an ideal way of sort of planning your trip to sort of
Yeah.
be 40 hours out from your day of play and not having anywhere to play. It's difficult. Or getting pulled out of the old course ballot and sort of having wasted £250 on a golf course somewhere else that you can't get a
Well,
refund.
the one time I've managed to do this, and this was I went through the singles queue, which is different, that doesn't really exist anymore, and we can talk about that. But I will say I was extremely pleasantly surprised. We got kind of a surprise tea time through that singles queue. You're on the tee in 27 minutes, is what they told us, and we had a Kings Barnes tea time that morning. Kings Barnes was not even open yet. We just said, we're taking the old course. We're going to do it. We'll see what happens. We called Kings Barnes later and said, hey, we got in the old course ballot. Is there any way we can move to this afternoon? And this was in August of 2015. They were without a doubt like, yep, you guys can come out at 2:30 or whatever it was. And it was just like, man, that just spoke to the atmosphere around like this. You're not going to be the first person to have to move something around for the old course there. And the courses may have changed policies or whatnot since then. It may vary from course to course. But again, that speaks to like my experience in this area was that like people are going to do what they can to make sure you have a great time. They're not out to get you, and they can find a
Lack
way
of
to get you.
bullshit.
Yeah, they can find a way to get you in. Now, again, demand may have changed pretty greatly in the last 9 years, and that may not be as easy, but that's not all to say that you're totally screwed if you go this route.
No, and then Kings Barnes still have that policy, and in fact, I think they're self-aware enough to know that people don't come to Fife or St Andrews to play Kings Barnes, or majority of people don't. So they've built a business. I mean, without going on to the trap draw again, TC, like Kings Barnes must be the most profitable golf
Yeah.
course in the world. I mean, talk
Like
about
Kings
like
Barnes,
millions.
it's like the Scottish Pebble, basically. You know?
And they've got like 10% of the operational costs.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they've got a very modest clubhouse. They've got like a meet and greet. They've got a couple of golf ops people. Yeah, sure, they've got maybe 15, 20 people on the green staff, but I mean, 18-hole facility, very easy to manage. Fescue grass, greens, the whole
Yeah.
lot. I mean, it's such a profitable golf course, and I mean, it's sold out from like 12 hours a day, every day of the week. No members, just visitor income only. it's crazy. And they have been super flexible. And there are a number of other courses that are flexible, but there are also others that are not flexible. But yeah, Kingsbarns was definitely a note to say, like, sure, it's very expensive. I think it's creeping up to $500 around at Kingsbarns, making it one of the most expensive green fees in the world. But people are still going, so they do a lot of things well there. But yeah, it's an option. It's definitely that tier one bucket in that area.
I got to admit, I'm a little afraid to open my app for the stack right now because I'm getting dinged on my grit score. I was a 99% grit score for how dedicated I have been to the program. Had a couple babies last week. Haven't worked out in a week. I'm hoping to sneak in. They have these little makeup sessions you can do in there when life gets in the way a little bit. If you want to do a little makeup session before you get back on your speed training program, you've heard me talk a lot about this program. I can confidently say before I went on leave, I hit my highest ball speed I've ever recorded personally, 175 miles an hour on the golf course. I think I can go even faster. I didn't make it to 180 in time for the twins to get here, but I got kind of close. I got a lot farther along than I thought I actually would. I set a lofty goal and wanted to see how far I could actually make it, but I cannot say enough great things about this program. It's very easy to do. You can do it in your backyard. It's perfect for the winter. In my opinion, this is not their words, but in my opinion, the fastest way to gain strokes on the golf course in terms of if you don't have a lot of time to practice, don't have a lot of time to train, don't have a lot of time to work out. It takes like 35 minutes to do in your backyard twice a week, and you will gain serious speed. And it is scientifically proven that you will gain serious speed in your golf swing. You can go to the stacksystem.com, use code no laying up. That'll get you 10% off your order. We're going to be a lot of other stories flowing in here. DJ's been doing it. Cody's been doing it. You can track your friends on it. The app is amazing. The stacksystem.com, code no laying up. Back to our pod.
Solid, to your point too. I think I've met a lot of gruff Scots, but I've never met a Scot that like was just genuinely unhelpful.
Right.
Like it's like everybody wants to like there's a distinct thread of common sense and like humanity there that if you ask somebody a question, like they're going to give you an honest, direct answer. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but they're not going to just kick you out and say, "Hey, you know what? Like I'm not going to help you." It's like they're very direct and blunt and honest, but in a way that I really appreciate, and it's refreshing.
Well, it's too. I've been a lot of countries around the world, and it's pretty like what you're describing there aligns really well with countries that have high percent of whatever income, GDP, whatever it is, based on tourism, right? Like basically, it's like if we're gonna be, everyone's nice to tourists when they understand like exactly what part. Like when I went to Ukraine, not necessarily as nice. They are not really relying on tourist income as much as they were in like Morocco, which was like, yes, this is a travel country. We need people to come in here and spend their money and do that, and that's how I've always felt.
But it's not even like I think I'm probably gonna take shots from the Irish here, but like I feel like sometimes the Irish can kind of just blow smoke up your ass a little bit, or be so effusively positive, or you know just kind of I don't know, just like tell you what you want to hear kind of thing. Whereas I feel like Scots are
More real.
direct and honest, but at the same time very hospitable, and just it's very much like there's an authenticity to it that they treat you like they treat everyone else. And they treat everyone else well, I think, is kind of the thread.
Back to the old course, here, tying in what I was saying about being able to move the Kingsbarns tee time as well. And what I've also had luck with is when I've had, like a new course or Jubilee course tee time and gotten on the ability to move those around as well. And also being in St. Andrews and being able to knock up to the new course or the Jubilee and get on day of in some capacity are kind of important, flexible things in relation to this. We're going to break down some of these golf courses a little bit more specifically because I think they're very much worth your time. But like that little bit of flexibility is pretty important if you're showing up to St. Andrews without a specific old course tee time.
Absolutely, and I think there's still an opportunity to do that. The likelihood of it happening has certainly become less. I mean, the number I've got here is, it's 15 to 20 times oversubscribed the ballot every day. So it gives you a sense of just like the demand that's there. And then obviously the sort of the offshoot of that is obviously the other courses are then oversubscribed if you don't get on. there's there's definitely a business case to be said. Like St Andrews probably needs another world, like a really solid golf course there, because the ones that are there at the moment are oversubscribed. There's maybe something in the works already around sort of outside of town, but yeah, it certainly leaves you sort of scratching your head and wondering, right, if I don't have an old course tea time, like where do we go? And I don't think people should be put off by St Andrews, but I think they should know that it is very expensive. It's certainly the most expensive region in Scotland. I mean, the US dollar against the pound is pretty solid at the moment, I think. So it might not hurt too many people's pockets, but it's definitely the most expensive region in Scotland.
So maybe I think maybe the answer, especially if you're listening to this a year on from when we're, publishing it, is, maybe come spend 2 or 3 days in St. Andrews on the front end of the trip, and then kind of shorten that versus you could. I've spent a week in St. Andrews at a time, and I've just popped in for a day or two as well. Because, Rudy, your point as well. Like, I think weirdly Fife doesn't have as much great golf. Like, there's not the depth in Fife, I think, when you get outside of St. Andrews as there is in like East Lothian or Ayrshire. Where I think and I think there's definitely a like, sorry, not to like preempt our talk about all the courses and everything, but like there's such an opportunity for courses like London and Leven to, kind of raise their floor a little bit, and attract more of these tourist dollars, and be kind of, there just be more gravity there, I think.
Let's get into that now. Then we've talked enough about higher level stuff of kind of the way we're going to structure this. I'm hoping this is a repeatable template that we can do in every region that we do. But we're going to try to build out, list out golf courses in 4 different tiers. I get so many, TC. I can't imagine how many you get. So many questions about building a trip to blah 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 to Scotland or whatever, and it does come down to personal taste. Like, it's really hard to do this. But if you're asking me, and you guys feel free to chime in here if you feel any differently about it, but there's usually depends on the region, but tier 1 in a certain region might have 4 courses or might have 1. And I'm curious to hear how you guys do this, but tier 1 would be like must play, no questions asked, base your trip around going to this course or these courses, and do not miss them. Old course is a little weird in this one. I think we're all going to put that in there, but I think we would still say it's worth going and trying to get on. Even if you don't get on, you're still going to have a great time in St. Andrews. But if you're going to St. Andrews and not trying to get an old course tee time, I don't know what I don't know what you're doing there. That's an
Yeah, I
interesting one.
guess it's kind of like, how do we treat tier one, right? Is it relative to the other courses in the region, or is it relative to the other regions? Of like, is tier one,
I
tier
think
one and Fife would maybe be different from tier one, on the West Coast.
Well, I think it like for me, I mean, again, we'll get into this, but I think there's maybe only one tier 1 course in Fife, and that is the old course. Whereas if you do
Yeah.
the West Coast, I would put Turnberry and Troon in tier 1 in terms of just kind of that level. Now, Carnoustie is going to be in my next tier of courses, but it's just 40 minutes away, right? So it is tier 2. I'm calling tier 2 is going to be like a series of courses to select from. Like, you cannot go. We're sending you somewhere that's good, and you're not going to have a bad time, but probably can't play all of them, right? And again, that speaks back to what we started in the beginning of the show talking about. Of we think it's probably more important to add something from tier 3, tier 4, which like I would call tier 3, like not going to be on a top 100 list, but you should play at least one of these courses if you're in the area, and we'll explain why for each one of these courses. But a course like Crail is a very unique Scottish golf experience, whereas insert other course that's a top great course. Like, if you're already playing a bunch of other top courses, you're not getting the variety maybe that you need to really make a trip a special. And then tier 4 is kind of more expert level, more of the TC angle here of like, let's get weird. If you've got time, if you got curiosity, like going off the map, we'll explain kind of what to expect with each of these places. Some regions might have 10 of them, some might have 0, I think, that are especially appealing. But again, breaking it out like this, I think, is interesting because it is extremely easy to, like we said, to print off that list and try to hit all the top courses. But I think you'd be leaving something on the table. And I think we can explain why with some of these places. So what's your tier 1 for Fife area, TC? Must play, no questions asked, base your trip around these, and do not miss.
You're gonna call me crazy. Obviously, the old course. I think if you're in St. Andrews and you don't play the new course, you're crazy as well. Like, I would put the new course up there. I love playing the new course. I look forward to it every time. And then well, you're gonna put it in either tier 2 or tier 3. It's a tier 1 course for me. It's among my favorite courses in the world, Ely.
I,
I think Ely's a freaking tier 1 golf course, and I like, even the thought of playing that place makes me happy, and it's everything that I want from a round of golf with quirk and variety. I mean, it's 16 par 4s and 2 par 3s, and yet you feel like you're playing radically different par 4s over, like
you don't even notice. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. There's a bar on the 4th tee. It's freaking wild. You get down and it's great on a cloudy day, but man, you get out there on like a nice sunny afternoon and there's not many places in the world I'd rather be. So that would be my 3 in Fife that are like tier 1. Like if I'm in Fife personally, those are the 3 courses that I absolutely cannot miss.
I love the fact you can talk about golf travel and sort of never be wrong because it's so
Yeah.
subjective, right?
Yeah.
We're all here with our own views, and this why these lists exist because it gets people talking. But can you just the worst named course in Scotland is the new course, St Andrews.
Yes. Oh my
It's
God. Thank you
not
for
new
this.
at all. It's very old. Can you? I don't think you've done some great videos recently with the St Andrews Links Trust and sort of showcasing the golf on offer there alongside the old course. TC, could you talk to what is the new course? What course does it feel like that you've played maybe elsewhere? I just don't think people have any sense of what it's about.
And
Yeah,
we
it's
have a video. It could be
yeah.
out by the time you're listening to this on the new course. We've never filmed out there, which has been a crime, but it is in production and we're recording this on September 25th here of 2024. And it's probably out if you're listening to this, but it's coming soon. So go ahead.
Yeah, the new is just it's like I think in an ideal world, you'd almost play the new before you play the old. And it's a great introduction to like if this is your first links golf trip
Yes.
and you're going to St. Andrews, I would say like the new course would be, maybe go play the Eden, the front nine of the Eden the day you get in and then play the new the next day and then build up towards the old because I feel like playing the new first would maybe help you appreciate and understand the old more. Plays a little bit more within the dunes back there. There's some par fives are exceptional. The par three, it's pretty flat for the most part, but there's more land movement on the new than there is on the old. Par threes are like super, super fun. Yeah, I mean it's what like 1885, 1890, Sally?
I think it's 1895. Old Tom Morris literally designed the new course, right? And to your point, Drew, people like for as much as we are kind of preaching here of like go and play the old shit when it comes to Scotland, I don't blame people that say like the new course. I don't want to play the new one, but like it does need a rename. It needs renamed. It totally needs. I get why it's called the new next when it sits right next to the old, but you're on the same piece of land as the old. Like you play the first essentially 8 holes, not literally all 8 holes, but like holes 1, 2, 3, and then you got 2 a little zigzag, and then you play all the way out to the 8th. They're all played directly next to old course holes, right? So it's literally the same land, and it's a different style. It's like a lot more basic links. Like the old course is one of one, and we can talk about kind of what makes that special. Double greens, double fairways, kind of like an old, truly old concept of the game of golf. New is like a more traditional golf course in terms of 18 individual holes, but brilliantly placed pot bunkers that are the whole exercise of links golf is avoiding these pot bunkers. These holes play so awesome depending on the different wind directions. Just really, really entertaining long approach shots you have into some of the par fives or maybe even to some of the par fours if the wind isn't in your favor. Ton of strategy and super well maintained in terms of like they keep that gorse back
Yeah.
and it is not a chore to play this place. You're going to hit your ball and you're going to find it. You can find some gorse if you get really offline, but I feel like over the last 10 years when I've visited there, it's just been trimmed back more and more and more. And it is just so enjoyable. I will join you on a massive endorsement of the new TC. I would put that in tier 2, just the way I would define it in terms of like, it would be a mistake to miss it, but it still goes in that category of like, you cannot go wrong with the new. And if you've got a bunch of other stuff jam packed in there and don't happen to get to it, then, I think that you're still going to have a great time there. But tier 2 is also a very, very, very strong endorsement in terms of I would be absolutely stunned if anybody turned up to the new and ever had a bad time. It's just a brilliant golf
And
course.
it's not gonna beat up high handicappers either.
No,
Like, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. You can take on the trouble or you can try to go make birdies or, you can make easy pars and or like hard pars and easy bogeys kind of if you want to as well.
Yeah.
So
How does your tier shake out, Rue? Tier one.
Well, just on the new, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's got all the parts to, one of your first golf experiences potentially being kind of a satisfying one. The turf, I'm not massive on turf, but like the turf there is so fast and firm, and it seems to be always in great condition. And then, as you said, the sort of the feeling of it certainly is a links course, but it feels like a links course, and I think that's really important for people that are coming to experience it for the first time. The old course is, of course, number one. I think, like a lot of people, it probably took me a while to really fall in love with the course, but I've been lucky to play it close to a dozen times now and sort of fall in love with it more and more. I kind of think about golf courses in Scotland that I dislike more and more that I play, which is never a good thing. But certainly the old course is like a grower, and I don't think at the age of 18 my golf IQ was at a level to really appreciate the old course when I played it for the first time. So definitely would sort of tell people to persist there. Certainly, some of the holes when you're not looking at the town can feel a bit underwhelming, but as you start to get closer and closer to town, it certainly is an enjoyable experience, and you'll hit shots and putts, most likely putts that you never hit anywhere else in the world on the old course. Tier two, Ely. I've had some of my favorite rounds there. 2022 Open. Some of our mutual friends and I headed out there for a game, and we didn't finish till 10:30 at night. And it was truly one of the best rounds of golf that I've experienced. And I think experiences matter. I think the ambience, and Jeff Shackelford wrote a great book recently about golf architecture and why people love golf courses. And I think the energy you get from a place and the setting you get from a place for me matters, and Ely gives you that kind of great feeling when you're playing the golf course.
yeah, that's
Um,
where like going back to like why I go to Scotland. Like that's why I go to Scotland is to walk to crest the hill on what is that on 9
yeah,
at Ely, and then crest the hill and you look out at the Firth, and then you got the little par three there, and then
10 is the short four where you
or
crest the
or
hill, right?
10, yeah, yeah, and then 11, and then 12 plays up the shoreline into that massive kind of dune feature, and it's just man, like that's just seared into my memory, and my eyes get wide even talking about it.
To give people an understanding here, so St. Andrews is kind of sits to the north. It sits to the north of Ely, right? So it's kind of it's a unique kind of coastline. You'd have to look at a map for it to get properly kind of described here, but it is about a 25 to 30-minute cab ride to Ely, but it's away from town. It's kind of like in a little. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rue. This is kind of a more of a vacation like club for a lot of people, either Edinburgh residents or whatnot. Like I think it's the month of July now where they don't allow visitor play. Does that sound familiar to you? Where it's kind of a summer club but you can get on as an international guest, just not in July or not in August. Which month is it?
yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
It's certainly like it's a touristy non-golfer sort of seaside quintessential seaside Scottish harbour town. So there's actually a couple of lovely restaurants in Ely, a nice couple of pubs as well. I wouldn't probably say to stay there because you're going to stay in St Andrews, but yeah,
And it
it's
gets pretty
certainly
sleepy after about 9 o'clock, 8 or
yeah.
9 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah, but as I said, it's think about that place 200 years ago. I mean, it probably was the heartbeat of that community, the harbour, and how things kind of moved around. So, crazy to think there was golf being played there at that same time. Another shout out for Crail. There's two courses at Crail. There's the newer Gilhans course, or there's the Balcomie. I personally love the Balcomie. Again, it's like a par 66, I believe. So people will maybe be put off by that, but I think for somebody wanting to experience links golf, I think it's perfect. So I would throw that in there. I think we mentioned Kings Barnes certainly previously. I think it merits an inclusion in tier two. I can see why people don't want to pay that much money. It certainly wouldn't be sort of on my top three or four in the region, but I think it's sort of set up to entertain the clientele that's coming. I don't think it's made for people like me, but another one next door to that would be Dunbarney, which is a kind of modern links course operated by an American sort of consortium. Very new, but one that has tee times, plays fast and firm, and a good option if you are struggling for a tee time. I think you can still pick up tee times there during the summer months. I
I
don't know
played.
if you
uh,
guys played there.
uh, you have, right, TC
I have
Dunbarton?
not played there
I haven't
yet.
played there either.
I've
Yeah.
walked around the site. I watched the women's open there, or the women's Scottish when they had it there. It's very I don't know. I'm kind of torn on, and I don't want to like give it a review just because I haven't played it. But I was a little surprised at like the inconsistency of the bunkering. It looks like there's kind of some new modern stuff, and then they're trying to do the pot, regular pot bunkers. It just seems like there's not a like consistent theme throughout. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty new. I think it's maybe 5 or 6 years old. They've certainly had their challenges, but we talked about the sort of desire for golf in that region. I think they're
Yeah.
certainly tapping into it. It's made for North Americans, so
I
it's
want to
one.
spend a little time on that, right? Like, so you
Yeah,
mentioned Kings Barnes, you mentioned the expense. It is a interesting wrinkle in this conversation, right? Because I have that as a tier 2 course. I don't think you're going to have a bad day at Kings Barnes. I think it's beautiful. It is a more modern style of links. It's not. It would not. I would not refer to it as a true links. I know what TC is going to call it. He said it's like a pair of fake tits. I can see a little smirk on his
it
face.
is.
Yeah,
It
I've played.
looks really good. It's just not
It's
quite.
beautiful, and I think it's just even if it's not necessarily our cup of tea or why we would advise people to go to Scotland to experience things, you're probably not gonna have a bad time out there. I really don't think you will, especially if it's your first trip. On my first trip, it was my favorite of the bunch just because I was kind of struggling with the turf and like it was a good merging of like it's closer to like a Whistling Straits style than it is like a St. Andrews course. It's just worth knowing that going in, and it's very expensive. So I would say, like, if you do not end up playing Kings Barnes, you can still create a real, like, a great trip. Like, we would send you to Ely over Kings Barnes, and it's not even half the cost, I'm sure, to play that. And it is old school, true Scottish links, and kind of again what we are recommending and what we've had the most special experiences doing. So it's unique. That's a course that like you can get really varying opinions because to some or a fair amount of American travelers, they clearly prefer something like that. They prefer the views. They like the maybe a little nicer, more modern turf and the way that it looks versus how things play. So just want to give the full spectrum of opinion on that to say we're not saying avoid it. I've had great times out there. I think it's a good wrinkle, but it still is not like top of the list of what I'm looking for out of a Scottish golf trip.
I would
yeah,
say it's like I would put it in tier 2, 2.5 for
Okay.
me to where it's like it's not a must play. You're guaranteed to have a good time. But like as far as modern courses go, like I put Castle Stewart a
Yes.
firm tier 2 up north, whereas I don't think Kings Barnes is to that level, and it's just more, I don't know, it's just farmlandy and yeah, it just it's just not what I'm looking for when I go to Scotland.
yeah, and to play devil's advocate, or in the defense of Kingsbarns and Dumbarton, they'll tell you that golf was played there 400 years ago, and if they look back in the records long enough. But yeah, I would agree. I think if you were to give me 10 rounds between Ely and Kingsbarns, it would be 8-2 or something to Ely. I would take up a game at Kingsbarns tomorrow if they offer me one, but I don't know if I'll be paying it myself. So yeah, and I think it's probably worth. I wanted to put the question to you guys, like people that have played Bandon Dunes. I got a chance to meet Mike Kaiser, and I asked him this question. I said to him, "Do you think Bandon Dunes and the success of your golf courses there are encouraging or taking away people from Scotland and Scottish golf trips?" For a lot of people that are listening that have been to Bandon, like how different is Scottish golf to Bandon? Because it plays, I'd imagine, quite like a King's Barnes.
It's a good question.
Uh,
Uh,
it's a really good question.
yeah.
I would put that I would say Kings Barnes feels more manufactured than Bandon does. Like I'm amazed at how every time I go back to Bandon, how the feeling I'm left with of how natural and how real links it feels. And I went to Bandon. That was my first links golf I ever played was in Bandon in 2013. Went over and played everything over in UK, Ireland, Scotland, all of that, and was going back to Bandon and expected to be let down and was 100% not. Like it's really
It
freaking
holds
good.
up.
It,
Yeah.
it's done all the right way, and it's a really interesting question. But somehow Kings Barnes feels a little bit more um, manufactured is not really the right word, but because again, Whistling Straits and Bandon are extremely different, just in terms of they're both just kind of on the coast. But Kingsbarns is a more aerial style game, whereas like Bandon was like, no, you're playing this shit along the ground. Like that's how
Well,
we're
yeah,
doing this.
Bandon was like it was good land for golf before they built a golf course there, whereas Kings Barnes was like farmland, right? Just like the castle. Like I don't get worked up about the castle course
We'll
having
get to
played it
Castle.
now because it's like it was farmland, right? Like they improved, they built a course on land that wasn't necessarily suited naturally for golf. I think at Bandon, the one thing that's maybe lacking is the turf conditions aren't always, there's such a wider spectrum of weather. I think that they get there, and it gets a little hotter. Um, as far as the fescue is not quite as bulletproof in coastal Oregon as it is in Fife. And like for me, I would go to Bandon more, but it's just really like it's easier for me to get to Scotland than it is to
Yeah.
Bandon, like I know sounds crazy, but like it's a 2.5 3 hour drive from Eugene. That's two flights for me. I might as well go to Scotland and get the absolute real thing. And then I think the stuff that I like at Bandon, like I love trails. That's more like that would be more Parkland style in Scotland than links, I guess.
It
And
also is like speaking. You're just a part of like. There's not a ton of culture to experience at like a resort like Bandon, whereas Scotland, we're talking about just getting 30 minutes outside of St Andrews. You're getting an entirely different scene on top of it as well. It's a good question though.
yeah, and having never been to Bannon Dunes, my your summation there would suggest that it's similar golf, but once you leave property at Bannon Dunes, I mean that's where Scotland is unique,
Yeah.
right? It's where you just can't replicate it. You can't replicate the old university town of St Andrews, or walking into a restaurant and seeing a Titleist logo on someone's hat because people live and breathe golf, or playing that hidden gem down the road that has locals in there, drinking and asking you about your golf trip, or
Yeah.
visiting a 500-year-old Scottish castle. I mean, that's
Yeah.
cultural experiences that you just can't get in America looking for that type of experience, right?
Yeah, Rue, I would say from a Bandon perspective, I think you're probably looking more towards the stuff up in Aberdeen, that like a Royal Aberdeen or Trump Aberdeen, or even some of the stuff even up north of there, that a little bit more similar to that than say Kings Barnes as far as Bandon goes.
So where does Carnoustie fit in this for you, Rue? I mean, again, it's about 40 minutes from Fife and from St. Andrews. It's obviously an open rota course that a lot of people are going to recognize. How do you recommend Carnoustie to people, and kind of where does that fit in? How you would tier things out?
I think it would be like a 1.5 for
You
me.
guys got it. You guys got to stay in your tiers here,
I
man. You're
know.
making it
And I
more
Well,
keep
confusing.
saying,
oh yeah, so we're counting this as part of Fife. We're
I
saying
I would say it's
for
within
this
the same
exercise.
trip.
Okay.
I think it would. I know it's not technically in, or is it technically in Fife? I don't know, but it is.
it's
Uh,
an Angus, which
yeah,
is separated by the River Tay, which is Scotland's largest river, and we've got some great infrastructure there. TC, the bridges over the
You do.
Tay are
it's
pretty
great.
You do.
impressive.
It's a nice drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about 40. I mean, the Dunhill Links is taking place next week, and that the players and amateurs kind of ferry between the three courses: the Kingsbarns Old Course and Carnoustie, and yeah, about 40 minutes drive. I think we've all grown up. I mean, one of my earliest golf memories on TV was watching Paul Lawrie snatch that victory from Van der Velde behind it. So it always has a special place in my heart, Carnoustie, but it's so subjective, right? I think I enjoy links golf courses. I enjoy links golf courses that kind of provide views, and that's just my taste.
Sure.
Carnoustie doesn't offer views. It offers you, you're only less than a kilometer away from the shoreline, but you don't actually see the coastline at all. I'm sure for like a scratch players like yourself, like that's a really enjoyable, like thorough test. But somebody who floats around sort of 6, 7 handicap didn't do it for me. But
Hmm.
it's still like for people that want to go see and play open road golf courses, and if that's a total different conversation as well. Is that still in vogue? Is that still something that people like to pursue? I feel like you've done as a no laying up, have done a great job of shining a light on some other courses and maybe shifting the attention away from the open road courses. But for me, it's one that you've got to play. You've got to feel and play Hogan's Alley. You've got to remember the open rotor shots that you've maybe seen through the years, but it certainly wouldn't be top of my top 10 in Scotland.
Interesting. TC, where do you net on Carnoustie?
I'm probably a little bit more favorable on it. I think I definitely agree, Rue. It's not the most charming place either. It's a little bit, it just
Very
kind of feels a little bit
corporatized.
out of the
Yeah.
way, and it just doesn't have really a club feel. It's more of like, hey, this is, a little bit like some of the places we played in Ireland. That it's like, all right, the tour bus is pulling up here, a couple times a day. That said, I think like I was extremely pleasantly surprised by the variety in the routing. Like there's so many fun holes out there. But I do get that sense, Rue, that it's like going on a ski trip and skiing double black diamonds one morning. It's like it's very technical. It's very like, all right, I gotta lock in here. Or Soly, it would be like coming to the Jacks area and playing TPC Sawgrass. Like
See,
you're near the ocean and it's a
yeah.
little bit more, but it's a little bit more point to point, or hey, you know what, like you get off your edge a little bit and it is going to be a long day for you.
See, I think what tends to happen with people is they picture 99 with Carnoustie in terms of
Yeah.
how thick that rough was, lost balls off the fairway. And every time I've been there, it has not been maintained that way. It's a tough golf course, don't get me wrong, but not the kind that just ejects you and makes you not want to play and pick up your ball and just go home. Like it's kind of a fun ass beating. Again, that might be low cap privilege shining through in that, but I have not found it to
That'd be a
be
good shirt, Carnoustie, a fun ass beating.
yeah, like I've not found it to be overly penal in that regard. And again, that could be low cap privilege as I say that, but it's surprisingly fun, and I think there is some charm into some of those holes. Like it's
I think there's charm in the holes. The setting is just not
it's
like,
it's not
it's like you're
amazing.
playing in a bathtub or something, and you're kind of like, you feel like you're near the ocean, like Rue said, but you can't see the ocean. You don't really feel the ocean.
What?
It's
Yeah.
you just sense it.
What's a good example off the top about like is Kiowa a good example here in terms of like a golf course that like might be a thorough ass beating, like no matter what your skill level, that isn't that fun. It's pretty, but not that fun. Whereas
Yeah, Carnoustie's a lot more charming as far as the actual holes themselves than that.
yeah,
I agree
I
there.
think it's a fun play. That's where it goes in tier 2 for me in terms of like if you go up there, you're not
Yeah.
going to have a bad time. I really don't think you will. Do you need to play it because it's a championship golf course and it's in the area? I would say no to that. Like it is 40 minutes away. Like it would make sense in a lot of itineraries, but again, my tier 2 of courses was New, Carnoustie, Ely, and Kingsbarns. And I don't know if you can get to all of those in the same trip, was kind of my point of if you're doing Kingsbarns, maybe you're not doing Carnoustie because it'd be a crime to miss both Ely and the new course. Like that would be a major problem. I would send people probably to the new and Ely before I'd send you up the road to Carnoustie because of that variety that you get out of it. But it comes down to personal taste. It is really fun to watch open road courses on TV after you've played them. Like I've been there, I've hit the shot, that Rory's hitting right now. Like there's a lot of charm in that as well. So,
And there's so many different spots there where that, those spots from the broadcast, and then it's the holes that you're not expecting
yeah,
to really blow you away, that you're like, "Oh, man, like, that was a great hole," or "That was a great mid-length par 4," or "The par 3s were really fun." Finishing stretch is a blast.
outrageous.
Just,
Yeah.
like, that's where I really get the sense of what you were saying, Sally, of, like, that fun ass beating. I'm like, "All right, man, like, I'm gonna try to par these last 3 holes." Like, that is gonna be, like, buckle up, put my hard hat on kinda thing. But that's why I put Kingsbarns in that 2.5 and
Cheating.
Carnoustie in 2, because I think I would play Carnoustie, similar to what you said with, like, Kingsbarns versus Ely. Rue, I would put Carnoustie, like, 8-2 over Kingsbarns.
Yeah, and Carnoustie, not that people really need to know this, but is going through an interesting sort of ownership thing at the moment.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to, change over hands to sort of a private ownership, which would be really interesting because I do think they have work to do and making it feel more charming. I think that was the word we used. The hotel is ghastly. It reminds me of the course in Orlando that they play with the massive hotel. I forget the name, but they always play the little. It might be one of the
Oh, the
Ritz.
PNC father-son
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
at the Ritz, yeah.
It's maybe not quite as bad as that, but yeah, they've got work to do there, and Carnoustie as a town doesn't have a great deal going on there. But one thing I did want to give Carnoustie credit to is, that's an open water golf course that you can literally go on the website and book. You can email the reservations team if it's fully booked that day and join a waiting list, and they keep you up to date. They routinely go live on with tee times on a certain date, so you can be front of the queue for your booking your trip. So planning and booking Carnoustie is probably the easiest out of any open water golf course
I'll
in
say as
Scotland.
well, they've got like for what they lack in charm as far as the setting. Both times I've been there, the staff has been exceptional. Like they're so friendly and helpful, and just it's a well run operation for what it is. So
Yeah, and some of the lack of charm in the tour bus thing is like you kind of need some of that infrastructure for places that are going to be really popular, right?
yeah,
Again, it might you're not that feeling of you discovering a place is not found there, but at the same time, kind of necessary for some of these. To your point of like the waiting list, their efficiency in getting people out there is. It, would the answer be different at all if Carnoustie was 15 minutes from St. Andrews? That's something I thought of too. Of like be kind of hard to miss if it was just down the road versus kind of the 40-minute drive.
it's a good question. I think like that's where like I always look when we're playing the old or the new. I always look across the Eden estuary towards there's like these forested dunes
Yeah.
right next to the Air Force Base there, and I'm like, man, if they could just build a golf course right there, like if Carnoustie was right there instead of
Yeah.
40 minutes up the road, yeah, I think it would be,
Different
a
equation.
lot. Yeah, definitely.
So officially, TC, what is your tier two?
Uh, Gosh, all right, tier two would be Carnoustie. I think just Carnoustie.
Okay. You're not putting Kings Barnes. I'm not gonna let you do 2.5. So that's going where does
Well,
Kings
I
Barnes have
mean,
to go for you?
technically, all right. So tier three, you said not going to be on a top 100 list, but you should play at least one of these. Uh, Tier two. All right, we'll put Kings Barnes in
Okay.
tier two,
I think it
but
should be in
it's at
King
the bottom of tier two
in
for
tier
me.
two. Rue, what is your official tier two?
I think I had Crail
You have
in
Crail in
there.
this list. Let's do Crail now then. Tell us
Yeah.
a bit about Crail.
So Crail has two courses. They've got the Balcomie, and then they've got the Gilhans second course there. The Balcomie is the old one, and as I touched on earlier, I think it's quintessentially Scottish links course. Some short par fours, par 66, played along the sea, great views. Certainly a great place to start or finish your trip. A clubhouse and a membership that embraces the visiting golfer. They claim to be the seventh oldest golf club in the world. My friends at Fraserburgh dispute that strongly. They claim to be the seventh oldest. 1777 or thereabouts is kind of how that club dates back, and a little bit closer to town than Ely, a touch closer. But I just found the whole experience there kind of it's a vibrant, busy member Scottish club, and I'd imagine their dues are a little over $1,000 a year. I wouldn't say it's certainly any more than that. So yeah, I think it just kind of characterizes exactly what Scottish golf clubs are about at that place. So
Just so you don't
um,
scare off all the Americans, it's a par 69, not a par
69.
66. But
There you go.
it has one of the best opening stretches anywhere. I mean that first tee shot up on top of the hill is fantastic. Then you play the second hole, a par five, right along the ocean or sea. I forget what you would define it as there. Third hole, par three, again right along the coast. The fourth hole, just this incredible cutoff. How much do you want to cut off par four around a natural bend? Great par three coming back. It's got some really freaking good holes. It gets a little tight, might need a helmet in there in that middle stretch with a couple
A
adjacent
lot of four
fairways.
calls.
Yeah. And then the final little four stretch is a little tight over on that back part
I
of the
love
property.
that 15th hole though. I think that's one of the coolest like short par fours
Yeah.
in Fife.
A little
Yeah.
niche thing that I always think, people that maybe don't play a lot of old golf courses kind of can appreciate is the short walk between the green and the tee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it always is a sign of an old golf course. Obviously, the sort of the ball, the ball and the distances that we all hit nowadays, sort of that's maybe changing. But you certainly spot that at places like Crail, Balcomie, or like some of the older courses like Kilspindy, for example. and North Berwick, you can just basically walk off the green straight onto the tee box.
Yeah, I think, man, like Krill's itching to get in my tier 2 as well, but it's just I think
Tier
the
3
more
for me. It
yeah,
it
the
it,
more
it
I play
yeah.
Krail, the more I'm like, "Oh, man, that place is awesome, it's charming and all that," but if it's between Krail and going and trying somewhere new, I'm probably gonna go try somewhere new just 'cause, like, that sense of, exploration or curiosity.
I do remember my first time playing Crail, which was back in 2015, knowing nothing about any of this, and it was like a whole new world, right? I mean, it's you get out, you got to drive to it. It's maybe 20 minutes away from St. Andrews. I don't even know if it's that far, and you're like, holy, this place was built in the 1700s. How is this even possible? And it is like it's in that list of not going to be in a top 100, but you should play a course like that on your trip. Is kind of the flavor that we're looking for. I'm not like it's not gonna. This is kind of what I want to be clear on delineating is like Ely is a different level than Crail, like in terms of what
Yes.
kind of golf experience you're going to have.
Krail's a little bit more rustic,
Yeah,
like
it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but like the Ely Crail split for me would be closer to 8-2 or 7-3. I think.
That's
Yeah,
yeah, I think Krail too, it's like it's cool, you get the lifeboats there, and you feel like you're kinda out on the edge of the earth, to an extent, and, like, 14's a great par 3 down the hill there, and there's fun, cool
Walls. There's
holes.
cool walls too.
Yeah, I
Frame
I
part of it.
feel
Yeah,
like it's a
it's cool.
must, it's an absolute must if you're going on your first Scottish golf trip, and then with each consecutive trip after that, I think it's less important or less consequential, and it's more of just like, "Hey, that's a fun course to go play." But I
Yeah,
think this is the kind of course that's gonna help you appreciate the quirk and the charm of Scottish golf.
gotcha.
and to go back to that 8-2 question, which I think is a good way of thinking about things. Like if you were to plan a trip and saying, right, I've got a week and I can repeat around somewhere, I don't think it would be Trail. Like I think
Right.
playing it once is sufficient, and that's why I said sort of
Yep.
top or tail your trip with
Yep.
around there. Another one where thinking about promotion on the border of promotion between 2 and 3, and that really has made an effort. Going back to the Carnoustie region is
And
Panmure.
you're
Panmure is really working hard on attracting not just appeasing the overseas, but like really working hard with their visitor experience, like doing like daily tours of the clubhouse and giving um, golfers a history lesson when they're there.
Cool
Um,
clubhouse, cool vintage
yeah,
vibe there. If you're going up towards Angus, towards Carnoustie, like that's polar opposite in terms of like the old school nature of it.
yeah, and I think it's been made famous. Hogan prepared for his one and only Open there, practicing on the sixth hole, I believe. Um, but yeah, it's or it could be the seventh hole. But yeah, it's a cool spot and a really nice links course, and you always feel like you're gonna get a huge warm welcome there. So
yeah,
I
cool
definitely
greens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in tier 3 for me. Of just again another equation of like that's a little far from Fife. If you're I don't know if I would send someone from there specifically to go play there. If you got more lengthy trip and you're doing Carnoustie and you want to get 36 in up there, that's definitely an option.
That's a
I think
big 36-hole day
it
too,
is.
playing Carnoustie and the drive and all of that as well. That's where I struggle a little bit with Panmure of like, man,
How do you fit it in is
yeah,
tough,
it's maybe not good enough to go play it on its own if you're not staying up there, but at the same time, it's worth seeing as well.
Yeah, I think it's one, if you're trying to melt together the Fife region and Aberdeen, I think it's like a good place to
Yeah.
play on that travel day.
Yeah.
It's kind of on the way up the road.
And if you're in an especially busy time period and struggling to get tee times at places, this is another option. I think is where Pamir falls in for me.
Yeah.
Anything else in tier 3 for you guys?
Like
Where does Jubilee end up falling? I've got it in
that's
tier 3.
where so Jubilee is hard. It's good hard. Like you can kind of, there's a lot going on out there. There's some of the holes out by the point there, like 9 is just spectacular.
And just for listeners' sake, Jubilee is a St. Andrews course. It is on the same land as the new and the old. It is like the probably the third of those, I think third ranked of those. Been through a lot of iterations in the past. It's kind of on its fourth iteration and has some characteristics of the new, is more similar to the new than the old, of course, but clear step below the other one for me. But I always really enjoy playing the golf course.
Yeah. Maybe this is maybe the wrong time to even bring up this question, but like, how long have we spoke about St Andrews and now we're talking about the Jubilee? It's maybe an answer for in
Yeah.
terms of how much we want to play it. Like, has I don't know enough about the history, but like, has anyone thought about bringing in like a Bill Coor or someone of that standard to actually touch the Jubilee and get people excited again about it? Because it feels like the forgotten child a little bit.
And then they do the composite course with the Jubilee and the new during, the Dunhill or the Opens, and kind of, because they use the new for driving range and all of that. It's a little bit, yeah, it's a little tricky. I think, like, for my money, I would rather play the front nine of the Eden. I love the front nine of the Eden. Like, that's so much fun. And the back nine is like, just there's 2 or 3 holes on the back nine that they added after the fact because they built the driving range, took some, holes away. But for me, like, the front nine of the Jubilee, I would put that, like, I would just go play 9 holes. You can play it in 90 minutes. That to me would be like tier 3 of, like, cool, like, just go do that. You can squeeze it in whenever, wherever in your itinerary. You can do it, as a twilight round or whatever. And whereas I feel like the Jubilee, I'm like, all right, like, if I absolutely, am hard up for a round, cool, go play that. There's some really cool holes, but it kind of lacks the consistency or the continuity throughout the round.
I think that's fair. I feel like I've the last like 2 times I've played Jubilee, I've gone in with lower expectations than I've left with. I've kind of like, you know what, that was solid. That was a pleasant experience. I think it if you need a place to play, if you are coming unprepared into St. Andrews and have some free time, it is worth your time. Like it is. It's I would not
Yeah.
like that's the reason we're kind of tearing them out there. I would not put it above any of the other tier 2 courses that we've mentioned though.
Like,
Good
would you
option.
rather play London or
So
the Jubilee?
I'd love to see chat with you guys about London and Leven Links. I've never been to either of those courses, so I don't know how to rank those and where those fit in.
I mean, there's something to be said about the ease of the St Andrews Links courses and it all being under the same umbrella. Certainly for people that are planning their own trips. I've played both the Eden and the Jubilee, and they kind of fall kind of vanilla for me a little bit. But if you have time in St Andrews and you need to fill out tea times, I probably would gravitate there. Again, TC, I feel like you've played these other two more regular than me, but they don't they're not overly inspiring pieces of land. Yeah, they've been around for a long time and parts of both have nice, undulations to them and a bit of a linksy feel, but yeah, neither get the heart racing. But again, we're dealing with a subjective topic.
Yeah, I think London, I mean, and part of that is because it was one golf course and they
Explain that.
split
Yeah,
it.
explain that.
Yeah, so it played from London, played from one town to the other. They
And
they kind
again,
of,
London and
yeah,
Leven. This is about 30 minutes probably
yeah,
outside of
kind of
St.
back
Andrews. Yeah.
toward, like, southwest, kind of back towards Edinburgh, but a little bit out of the way. If
Yep.
you're, you know, there's like 6 different ways to get from St. Andrews to Edinburgh, and one of them is through London and Leven. But they play kind of long ways along the shore, and so it was kind of, you know 18 holes going all the way from, one town to the other, and then they split into 2 separate clubs, and they added each of them added 9 holes, on flatter kind of farmland to, make up the difference to net up to 18 for each one. So I know London just did a big bunker project. So I haven't played it since they did that. I think London's a little bit more captivating. I think there's better views. It's a fun, like, it's a really nice course to play, like, on a nice afternoon. You see you look across the Firth. Whereas I think Leven was in pretty poor condition. Again, this was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago that I played it. So I can't speak to it now. But part of the reason I would say, like, go, like, rent a car is I like building in a day where, like, I don't have any tee times planned, and I just go drive around, and, like, I won't even play courses. I'll walk around, or I'll say, "Hey, let's stop by these 3 or 4 courses, see what they're all about. If one looks great and they have an open time, cool, let's go play it," kind of thing. And that's where, like, tier 4 for me, like, last trip over, played a place called Kinghorn, or stopped at a place called Kinghorn, and I'm like, "Holy shit, I am coming back and I'm playing this place, like, first round off the plane on the way out to St. Andrews next time I'm back there," because it's maybe 25 pounds, 30 pounds, and it looks spectacular, tight piece of property. kind of up on a bluff, kind of more of a headland course. But like DJ and I stopped there. We stopped at the Burnt Island, which looked cool, a lot more parkland, kind of forested woods, and then we stopped at Aberdour as well, right there, and really cool. Probably coolest like first two holes, kind of weird par threes over a cove and stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that I love is like to just see, that's where it's like I think London and Leven are in that kind of spot right now as far as hey, they're cool curiosities. But I think the potential exists for those to be more than cool curiosities. I think they're right along the water there. They could do cool things between the two clubs if they wanted to. Like that would be a cool like bucket listy kind of thing of like, hey, you know, 4 times a year we're gonna play from one clubhouse to the other, and then we're gonna play back or something like that. But yeah, and like late, like you drove past Lady Bank on my way uh through last time too, and that's another one that's like I know American tourists aren't going over to play parkland, inland, tree lined golf courses, but they have open qualifying there, and there's cool stuff. Or Glen Eagles is up the road. I've never been to Glen Eagles, but we should probably talk about that as part of this, you know, because it's
What tier are
technic.
we on now, TC? This is
I don't
really we
know. I
went through
don't
every
know.
single
That's why
golf
like
course
3 and
here.
4 just get mixed in. Where I think tier 3, I'm putting Anstruther in tier 3.
Well, yeah, that's the mainstream kind of tier 4. I feel like that's kind of shot to certainly people's Instagram feeds, and there's been countless features on Anstruther, 9-hole course that hugs, again, not the most linksy of land. In fact, not linksy at all. But they've done good with the kind of land that was there, and just a great spot to play in an afternoon if you've got an afternoon free, or you saw the evening was nice and you wanted to pop out and play. Short drive from St Andrews, maybe the best fish and chips in Scotland in that little town. So uh, definitely a consideration, and yeah, unfortunately not as niche as or bizarre a place to play nowadays. I think it's certainly more on people's radar.
Ru, have you played the Strathtyrum or Strathtyrum
I
course in
have
St Andrews?
not, no. But if the St Andrews Links want an idea, I think they should turn that into a floodlit course, modernize, make it different. I don't know, like
Yeah.
it's the place that St Andrews locals start the game. If you're getting into golf, I think that's the place you go with your kids.
Is it fair? Like, so this kind of tier 4 level, of course, I title it with like, let's get weird. Like, it's kind of the way I think of this one is kind of like so there's some Scottish golf courses that'll make you think differently about the game of golf than like standard 18-hole golf. This specific area, though, Fife does not scream like there's a ton there's not a lot that comes to mind in this tier. Whereas when we get to different parts of this series and go to different parts of the country, there's a lot more courses that I think will fall into this bucket. So I didn't have much to nominate in here for this one specifically, but there is one other course we do need to talk about that I've not heard slot into any of these. It was mentioned, though, the St. Andrews Castle course. We did a podcast about this golf course this past summer. We did a video on it as well. I think that should be out sometime soon. I don't believe it is out as of right now. For those who don't know the history of it, it's a David McClay Kidd course. I believe it was built for the first in 2005, around then, and has been redone a couple of times. It's about 7 minutes drive from like the downtown area, city center of St. Andrews. So it's a little bit outside of the town. It carries the St. Andrews name. It gets a lot of controversy. Tom Doak famously rated it a 0 in his confidential guide, meaning the course should have never been built on land like this. It didn't come up as a recommendation. Ru, kind of tell us about what your response is when people ask about the Castle course. And I bring that up especially because it seems like people are pushed there. It seems like a lot of tour operators end up lumping this course in. A lot of first-time Scottish visitors I hear from are when I ask their itinerary, that almost inevitably does include the Castle course. Can you tell us why that might be and what you recommend to people with this course?
I definitely have not a great deal of warmth or encouragement when people mention the castle course. I mean, it feels like you're going there because you're being sent there because you have to go there, if that makes sense. How long have we spoke about golf in the region before the castle course?
It's
I
a long
mean,
time.
I'm like, that's not to, Tom Doak's done in some incredible work. He's built some of the best modern golf courses. Been lucky to work with some incredible landowners that have had the trust to do, what he wants to do. Unfortunately, he was given a bit of a dud hand in terms of the land he could
This is
use.
David McClay Kidd. You said
Sorry,
Tom
yeah,
Doak. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
David,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
David
Yeah.
McClay, yeah,
Oak's
like,
gonna hunt you down
I was
now.
yeah,
gonna say.
sorry, Tom. Two very different personalities. So we might want to need to edit that bit out. But I guess David McClay Kidd was starting out his career, and he couldn't. If St Andrews come and ask you to build a golf course, I mean, would you not say yes to that? I think you
Sure.
would. But maybe in hindsight, you would want to work with a different bit of land. I mean, you can only craft whatever you can with the land you're given, but it feels like it's not. You would look at that land like the farmland that was mentioned previously. I think it's not ideal for golf, and it's on top of a cliff. Sure, there's nice views of the town, but it's not the golf that I kind of close my eyes dreaming of playing in Scotland.
It's a bit too much elevation change on it for it to feel. It's not links golf, right? It's not natural. There's not a lot of natural feeling on it. I will say, again, this is kind of where I'm hesitant to give recommendations on some of this. For some people, might love it because the views are the best of anything that you're going to get in St Andrews because of that elevation change. You can see the ocean on 18 holes, like it's a pretty special spot in that regard. Now there's a lot. It is definitely a manufactured feel. The greens have a lot going on with them. There's a lot of places you can get yourself in trouble out there. It was extremely wet when we played it this past March and into April, which was I know it was a very unique winter and spring in terms of how much wetness there was there. But you can feel the difference in the land versus just where the other St. Andrews courses sit, 7 minutes away. But it's a complicated one because it's hard to say would I rather play the castle course or not play golf? No, I'd rather play the castle course, right? But I think I would also end up recommend almost the entire point of this episode would be to go pursue places like Ely, Crail, or even other more down the list places rather than the castle course because it took me 5-6 trips to the area before actually going to go play this course because of how much there is to offer and how much where I tend to want to get my golf, itch scratched is not at a place like the Castle Course. TC?
Yeah, I think eh, I I wouldn't want to play it if it's been wet recently. Like if it was dry, that would there's some really fun holes out there. There's some yeah, I think there on the front nine. There's some that kind of play down towards that corner. I like that stretch 7, 8, 9 is really cool. And then yeah, I think that stretch early in the back nine, it just kind of runs out of gas a little bit as you make your way up that big hill. And then it's like electric factory on the way in with like 15 through 18. So, yeah, my thing is I don't think it's a very great or a very good golf course, but I don't think it's a very good piece of land. It's not really a reflection of David McClay Kidd. It was like he wasn't set up for success there. Now talking to a bunch of the locals, like they love playing it because it's a change of pace and it gets you out of town and the views are spectacular. And that's where it's like I think it's probably it fits in with the Kings, like, Kings Barnes is a better version of that, but it's still it's like the same coin, right? Of like, that's not why I'm going to Scotland to play golf. From that, like Solly, like we played a scramble when we were out there, and like I had a blast because it was it was like
Yeah.
low stakes. You can hit all the shots. You can try to pull off the hero shots, that sort of thing. Versus like I wouldn't want to just roll the balls out and
Yeah.
count them all up that day. So yeah,
I can
and
see
that,
why I can see why it's a palate cleanser for locals. Like it's just a
yeah,
different, you've got views, for example, that you just don't have. Like St Andrews links down by the links pavilion there. If you're playing the new and the Jubilee, it's quite claustrophobic. The old course is right
yeah.
there, but it's got a different feel about it. We didn't mention the on the tier 4, the Himalayas putting green.
Go
I would put the Himalayas on tier 2 or tier 3. It's that fun, that good.
Himalayas
Um,
putting green sits just right between kind of the old, right next to the old course, right near, just off the second tee there. And tell us about that room.
Yeah, well, like if you're giving me 10 rounds between the castle and the Himalayas, I mean, we might be close to a tie. If you had an hour to kill in town, I would almost, encourage all of you to go down there and do that. I mean, you think it's £5 to the ladies putting green. You might have to wait for some older ladies and members to finish up in front of you. But wouldn't golf be in a better place if there were more St Andrews Himalaya putting greens? I mean, I know it's becoming a thing now. I think they've multiplied in recent years, but yeah, I mean, again, without giving people the history lesson, there was a growth of golf in St Andrews, and St Andrews was really inclusive in allowing women to play. And Old Tom Moores built them a putting green because there was lots of them wanting to take it up. So, um, St Andrews has always been an inclusive place to play golf. Still really popular. So many crazy putts. It's almost like crazy golf, mini golf. Played on fescue, really well maintained. Maybe running at like an 8 on the stimp. Would you say 7?
About
Yeah,
right.
which I don't think you'd want to get it
No, no.
above that because it would be
No.
unplayable.
So yeah, I think it's great. I think, as I said, if more places had it, then the golf would be in a better spot.
I think I'm gonna call an end to our golf related portion of this part of the episode because we've gone on quite some time just on Fife. But still get a lot of messages about food recommendations, places places to go, pint recommendations. Obviously, people know about the Dun Vegan, which is the famous pub that sits not far at all from the 18th green at St Andrews. There's the Jigger Inn, which sit right next to the 17th fairway, which are two just fantastic spots to go post round. But if you got longer time there, what are top places you recommend? For places to places for people to eat, other places to get a pint or anything. Either one of you can go into this one. I know TC, you've spent a lot of time there as well. But
TC, I want you to just remind everyone that, or educate people that about Scotland and its food and how it's not as shit as everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, you got to seek it out, right? You got to go find some good spots. I would say I think the best place in Fife to eat. It's out of town. You got to drive a little bit, but and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong. The Kinneuchar Inn, Kinneuchar, Kinneuchar or Kinneuchar. It is like that is all right.
Bruce
Tell me
not
what
jumping in to correct you. I think he wants you to just keep guessing.
Well, no, I would correct you if I knew of that restaurant. I haven't heard of that restaurant, so carry on.
It's excellent. I think that's among the best meals I've had in Scotland. It's I don't know, probably 20 minutes outside of town. There's Balgove Larder as well, but I think this is like the place that chefs from Edinburgh, like when they leave town, they go to a place like this to eat. So that's a spectacular place. Gosh, I always like this the St. Andrews shawarma place. That's kind of I'm always like eating late there, and it's one of the few places that's still open. Go there and then go to the gelateria to get a spot of ice cream after that.
Yeah, I mean, St Andrews is. You make a good point about eating late. I mean, St Andrews is definitely open a bit later than some
Yeah,
other towns in Scotland. I mean, you could go into Dornoch at 8 p.m. and most places are closed. So,
going to Dornoch at like 7:15, and most places are closed.
but yeah, I mean, I said it before. St Andrews is a bustling St Andrews University town. Like it's got a real ambience to it, and it benefits from that. And obviously, the golf revenue comes into town. I mean, the place is busy, and there's nice restaurants and there's nice bars. So, not short of places to go and eat and drink. Don't be sucked into maybe the Jigger Inn is maybe my advice.
Yeah,
Like TC said about the old course hotel, I think sure it's nice to sit outside and watch people play on 17 on the one day a year that you can do that. Head into town and walk between bars. I mean, how good was the Open in 22 when I mean obviously it was the Open Championship, but you were going from bar to bar, and they all had outdoor seating. It was so cool. And yeah, everything's a short walk in St Andrews. So make sure you stay in town and drink and eat and walk back. It's great.
yeah, yeah. Adamson's good. That Thai place is really good. That Thai pop-up spot.
What's the name of the Indian place? We always end up at it. It's
There's two Indians.
okay.
There's two Indian places in town.
Maisha or
Both are good. I've sampled both.
This should be a DJ Pie question, probably, because he spent like a month in St. Andrews
yeah.
sometimes against his own will over the last couple of years. But
And the tail end restaurant, like I'll be going to the Dunhill next week, and that'll be where I go
Yeah.
on my one night that I'm over there. So,
Actually,
tail end is a fish and chip
uh,
place.
shout out to the Lynx Clubhouse, like the kind of the new and the Jubilee. That clubhouse has
Yes.
a fantastic like offering for especially for lunch. That's an excellent place to go grab lunch. They've got great stuff. Ham's Ham is good as well.
That Lynx
You know,
Clubhouse you're talking about too, you can get
yeah,
bacon rolls, sausage rolls, and
yeah,
stuff in the morning. They'll get you coffee before your round of golf. Like they get you in and out. That's a really, really nice restaurant with good breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's fantastic.
yeah. And then I think if you want to like really, I've been to that Har place a few times. If you want to splurge, they've got a good tasting menu too. But Rue, in my experience in Scotland, most of the good food I've had has been either in Edinburgh or like out on the West Coast, like in Oban and like really seafood focused out there. So, but I think Scotland's kind of turning a corner as far as, hey, we're not just pub food. We're, we have great local ingredients. We have great beef. We have great seafood. We have great vegetables, and it's not just a bunch of fried fish and chips kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the seafood stuff is like world renowned, and
Yeah,
finally we're figuring to try and have some of it ourselves. So,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. And then obviously the meat that we have, lamb or beef. I mean, some of the steaks are world class as well. So, don't just come to Scotland thinking you're gonna have burgers and chips every night. I think we're better than that in most places.
yeah. I would say also the highlight of any trip to St. Andrews is the steak pies and the sausage rolls like out on the course at the turn is like that's a highlight, man. Like I look forward to that as much as I do the golf. Those are so good.
100%. Anything else for the Fife region as we move to wrap this portion of this opening episode?
Rue, where are you putting Dunbarney?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
3?
gonna retract my statement. It's probably into 3.
Okay.
It's new. I mean, look, they're set up to cater for people to give them a 2.5 experience. They're certainly think themselves as sort of that one category. But yeah, still very new. Lovely people. David Scott, the general manager there, is going to treat you really, really well. So yeah, I've got pretty positive things to say about there. I think it's something different to the region. It's American prices. It's set up for North Americans. So it's not going to be my cup of tea. Ely, Crail, Old Course, give me all that before Dunbarney. But yeah, the other thing I was going to say about St Andrews is just the fact that the weather, of course, not exclusive to St Andrews, but the weather is going to be pretty shitty at some point on your trip, and that is just Scotland. And the way I think about it is, you might be thinking I mentioned, how sustainable these courses are again, but like think about how these courses have survived. Like the climate is conducive to golf and fescue grass, and part of that is having cold and wet and yeah, and not very enjoyable weather. But I would say that Scotland has a lot more dry days than you might think. The East Coast, in particular, is a lot drier than, apart from this summer, of course, it's been horrible this summer, but it is quite dry on the East Coast in the summertime, and to expect lots of long days, hopefully dry days, and pack the waterproofs.
Has the fall been any better, or is it just a continuation?
It's been a little bit better, but I mean, I was at County Down in near Belfast there, and it was freezing, and it's pretty cold here at the moment as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I would agree, kind of an Indian summer is what they're calling it, a bit of a later summer. But then you certainly feel the nights drawing in a little bit now into September, October.
One other question: have you ever played Scots Craig?
I have not for a very very long time. Go on.
Is that worth going into that tier 4? Like we're seeing. I'm
It's
just like even for personal perspective, like Montefieth, Scots
yeah.
Craig, places that aren't necessarily links, but they're kind of parklandy with some gorse and some sandy soil.
Yeah, I mean, you group it with Ladybank
Yeah.
in that category. A tier 4 that I didn't mention, sorry, Solly, I know you're trying to finish this. Kingarrick, a hickory experience, kind of
Hmm.
go back in time. If you're wanting something unique, something different, something that you can only find in Scotland, that's a cool spot, like 30 minutes the other direction from St Andrews, that you can sort of go back in time a little bit and try some hickory clubs on a hickory designed kind of golf course.
And then Rue, one other question, just as far as like people wanting to add, how do you recommend people do Cruden Bay? Because that's kind of a, if you're going to the East Coast and you want to get a little bit more variety, and this is obviously a separate episode where we'll get up into Aberdeen and Cruden Bay and all that, but I feel like Cruden Bay kind of sits alone amongst, you know.
That's very kind of you to say. But yeah, I mean that would be doable for St Andrews. I mean, we've got lots of people come up here and do Aberdeen and St Andrews. I think naturally St Andrews is paired with the East Coast at some point. So whether it's the Highlands up north or the East Lothian region or the Aberdeen region. Um, I talk about the roads. I mean, from Carnoustie, it's probably an hour and probably a 90-minute drive. So on a pretty doable, easy road. So it's definitely doable. I mean, it's only going to be 2 hours max from Carnoustie from to Cruden Bay, so it's doable. But look, you're kind of edging towards, what people do is sort of, oh, do that one, and then I'll do that one, or maybe I'll do
Totally.
that one. And it's like,
But
before
I
you know
think a
it,
lot of the time people always want to pair East Lothian and Fife together when really, as far as like you you do Edinburgh traffic, crossing the bridge, all that stuff. You might as well like I think it probably makes more sense to go do Aberdeen and Cruden Bay and even up to Fraserburgh with the same trip as Fife versus it looks, as the crow flies, it's probably what 15, 20 miles across the Firth there, but it's, it looks super close, but it's not a functional trip to think you can just, ping pong back and forth between those two.
yeah, yeah. And what I would say, just a final thing on that, is the Aberdeen region is definitely a quieter region, so the
Mhm.
chance of getting your tea times there pretty straightforward. When you're dealing with North Berwick, Muirfield, Gullin number one, it becomes difficult and it becomes
Yeah.
busy. And parts of Aberdeen region still has a kind of authentic feel to it. Whereas I think most of East Lothian is kind of overran with North Americans in summer, which is not a bad thing, of course. That keeps the whole keeps my green fee and my membership down. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but for your tier 3 and 4 courses, you want to feel a bit of the local feel, right?
Yeah,
Not even North
that's
American. I mean,
safe.
I feel like it's just, people coming out from the city, people even coming up from London or from England as well. Like it's like the Hamptons, right? It's like the Scottish Hamptons now out of
Yeah.
North Berwick and that whole coast.
All right, well, that's going to wrap our first edition of this. I promise future iterations of these episodes. We need to kick off Scotland with a bang. This is covering that first region and how to play in your golf trip there. We're going to go region by region around the country with Rue for as long as until he gets sick of us talking Scottish golf with him. But thank you everyone for tuning into this first episode. Well, you can find Rue in the episode description. We'll give links to all of his content as well. And stay tuned for next time. Our next episode of this series, we're going to be covering the East Lothian region, and I promise we'll be somewhat briefer on that region, but we look forward to bringing it to you. Thanks for tuning in.